My name is Gillian Crawford. I am 58 years old, and I still don't know what sounded more absurd, the phrase erratic behavior coming out of HR's mouth or the way I asked on the machine. I'm sorry, can I repeat that? It all started with an email. No subject line, no explanation. Just, attendance is required. Zoom, 14 o'clock. I had time to make tea, put on a cardigan, and think that it might be something urgent about audits. Although, urgent at 2 p.m. is never good. When I entered the call, the first thing that caught my eye was CEO Dexter Stone. Behind him was our HR, looking like a wet sheep. And someone else, an unfamiliar woman with a blank stare. Later, I find out that she is an external consultant. For ethics, ironic. Gillian, Dexter began, without any introduction, we have assessed the situation and concluded that your behavior no longer meets the standards of team security. I'm sorry? I didn't even try to hide my shock. We have internal signals of emotional instability on your part, and under the current circumstances, it already sounded like a memorized text, like a template they were reading from a script. I sat still because the slightest movement seemed like an explosion. Even the camera was shaking, and that was the only sign that I was still breathing. HR tried to add, "We realize that this may come as a surprise to you. Are you serious?" I looked directly into the camera. Silence. A pause. Stone's gaze is cold even, like a man who had decided his fate before the conversation. You'll have a week to transfer your duties. We will send you instructions. We also offer a compensation package. I felt the tea in my cup get cold. My hands felt heavy, and something clicked inside me like a switch. I didn't say thank you or goodbye. I just closed the laptop and stared out the window. There, behind the glass, the sun was beating on the blinds. I wondered how the world could be so indifferent to what had just happened. And then, very quietly, I said out loud, "So, the game has begun." The room was quiet, but there was noise in my head. All the years, all the projects, all the reports, as if someone had pressed delete. I remembered how yesterday I was coordinating the budget with analysts. And today I'm being presented as a threat, as emotionally unstable. Me. I didn't scream. I didn't write a post on LinkedIn. I didn't call my husband. I just went to the kitchen, poured another cup of tea, and looked at myself in the mirror. Her eyes were calm. Her voice was like someone else's. "Gillian, if they think you're going to fall, they're going to be very surprised." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my pajamas in front of the monitor. I looked at the last email with the attached instructions on how to transfer access and knew that I would not transfer anything. I would start asking and digging. Because one phrase that Dexter had said was haunting me. We have assessed the situation. I don't know what exactly they assessed, but I know that they are definitely hiding something. And frankly, I don't plan to keep quiet. I rewound the clock back 6 weeks. Nothing dramatic, just another Monday. Coffee in a thermal cup, my favorite track in my headphones, Landslide by Fleetwood Mac. The calendar is silent, except for the morning circle at 9 o'clock, which I am traditionally 3 minutes late for. The window shows the dawn over the parking lot, where I counted the same 7 cars every morning as a disturbing ritual. The usual routine stability. Suddenly, there was a detail I couldn't ignore. I opened Excel. More precisely, the same macro I created back in 2015, the payment register, a spreadsheet that I knew better than my own face. And that's why I noticed it right away. The new name. Forward Metrics Group. I had never seen it before, and more importantly, I had never approved it. I usually know every supplier before they appear in the system. If a new one is introduced, it goes through me, or at least it should. But here, there was not even a hint, not a single discussion, neither at meetings nor in internal letters. It just appeared, and our main account pays them. I set myself a modest reminder to check the bill later, but my intuition was already quietly tapping the spoon on the cup. Dig in. On Tuesday night, after everyone had left, I opened the payment details. Forward, Metrics received $9,875 every Thursday, the same amount, no more, no less. Thursday, Thursday, Thursday. When the amount is regular, it usually means a contract, but I didn't see any contracts, and that was the first signal. The second was the address. I entered it into Google Maps, a street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. From what I saw, there was no analytics there, just a house with peeling paint, a front door with a curtain, and a lawn with weeds. The photo was taken in the summer of 2019, but something told me that even if the Forward Metrics group was there, it was doing nothing more than mowing the lawn. I exhaled a breath. I turned on my desk lamp. I decided to go all the way. I pulled up all the applications that went through this supplier. The cost item was strategic analytics. It looked official, but not for me, because I remember when the last budget for consulting analytics was canceled, a year ago, because of my report. And one more thing, I am a strategic analyst. I opened the PDFs. Each of them looked well-groomed, but too perfect. No chain of approvals, not a single comment. Most were signed by one person, the initials JS. And what's most surprising is that some of them were downloaded from the profile of a former employee who left 6 months ago. What if I'm wrong? I thought. A second of doubt. But after 18 years in finance, I learned to distinguish between a mistake and fraud. And this situation screamed the latter. I walked around the office. Then, in the kitchen at home, my hands were trembling as I poured myself tea, not from fear, but from the fact that the puzzle was starting to come together. Too clearly. My son asked me why I was so quiet. I said, "It's just work." But my mind was already raging. On one side of the scale was everything I had built: stability, respect, reputation. On the other was the truth. And a threat. After dinner, I opened a new notebook. I wrote down, Forward Metrics Group, 9875, every Thursday, residential address, no CFO signature, JS. And below that, barely noticeable. If I'm not at work tomorrow, it means I found something real. I fell asleep with this sentence in my head, and, as it turned out, not in vain, because it was this sentence that started the countdown. Not until I was fired. To the investigation. I didn't want to rush, not because of fear, but because of strategy. Because the office is like chess. One careless move and the queen flies off the board. On Tuesday, I came in early. In our industry, early arrival means either dedication or panic. In my case, it was a combination. I knew I needed to see the access register. Who approved the files? Who made changes to the old employee's accounting system? To do this, I went to Carla. She's a technical audit specialist, 46 years old, keeps fresh mint with her every coffee. If anyone keeps logs, it's her. Carla, I need to know who last logged into the system from where the documents for FMG were entered. It's just, something doesn't add up. She squinted. Is this a request from the supervisors? No, it's something internal. Just give me the login and I'll take it from there. Are you sure you want to go in there? I felt a spring start to contract instead of my heart. Why not? Because it looks like you're too close to something that should stay under the carpet. That was the first warning, not an angry one. It was more like a friendly warning. But I was already on the road where turning around was not an option. I waited for lunch. My colleagues left, but I stayed. I opened the administration panel, and what I saw made me lean back and just stare at the screen for a few seconds. Access to the JS account was restored 11 minutes before the payment PDF was downloaded. IP from the internal network, specifically from the 17th floor. We have only 2 teams on that floor, management and legal. I suddenly felt like I was running out of air. I closed everything. I walked to the coffee machine, and there I accidentally ran into David from legal. He was dry, always smelled of expensive lotion, and spoke only in sentences with punctuation. Gillian, you seem so focused today. Is something wrong? I smiled. It's just been a rough week. If you need anything, just ask. We all have to stick together as a team, especially when some issues are better not to raise. And that's when it clicked in my head. It was no longer intuition. It was a confirmation. I went back to my room. I locked myself in a small glass focus room and started writing notes to myself, not on the computer, on paper, because my trust in technology had evaporated. Forward Metrics, JSIP from the 17th. Carla is nervous. David knows. I knew I had one move, the only one. Contact the internal controller, or to the top management. But this would mean that they would either protect me or turn me in. I didn't know who I was dealing with yet. I dialed Lisa's number, internal audit. She was the only one I could trust. Gillian, I can only take 10 minutes right now. That'll be fine. Is it serious? In short, I think we're being robbed from the inside. And I already know from which office. There's silence on the other end. Then you need to be very careful. Because if you're right, this is not just a problem. It's a crisis. I thanked him. And that night I couldn't sleep again. But this time I wrote it down. The system was not wrong. People are. If tomorrow they ask me to transfer to the innovation department or suddenly cancel the project, I was right. For sure. We met in the park. In the center, near the fountain, where it always smells like coffee from a bagel cart. I was the first to arrive, and I sat on a bench, looking at people. Who among them, like me, was trying to hide their anxiety? Lisa came up without her phone. Only her keys and a small notebook. I don't want this conversation to remain somewhere on the servers, she said without greeting. Neither do I. I showed her the printed spreadsheet with the transactions, dates, amounts, account numbers. She just nodded, and when I finished, she said, "This is not just a similar chart. This is it." What? I didn't immediately understand. A classic kickback model, a pseudo-contractor, regular payments, and somewhere on the other end, someone who has a percentage of it. Do you think it's an internal conspiracy? I don't think it's someone from the inside. I think it's someone from the top. I looked at her in silence. I was shaking not physically, but from the inside. Are you sure? I saw something like this in my last company, and there it ended with the CFO being fired. But here, I don't know, Jill. It goes deeper than that. We were silent. A man with a stroller walked past us. Then a couple of teenagers who were loudly discussing something on TikTok. And in my head, I was already running through lines of explanations, excuses, phrases like financial restructuring and temporary optimization. Listen, Lisa finally said, if you really want to finish this, you have 2 days at most. Then the system will either notice your activity or someone will beat you to it and pretend to have discovered it themselves. What does that mean? There are 2 scenarios. The first is that you bring it up yourself. The second is that someone else brings it up earlier, under their own radar. And then you're just a worried analyst who couldn't prove it. I sighed. And the third option is that they eliminate me before I even open my mouth. She looked at me silently. I don't rule it out. That evening, I returned home with a new notebook. The old one was full, and I didn't want to mix the two. On the first page of the new one, I wrote, Scenario A, contact the CEO directly. Scenario B, make copies of all documents and send them to a third party. Scenario C, stay silent and let someone else expose everything first. I sat at the kitchen table until 2 in the morning. White noise was playing in my headphones to drown out any suspicious sound. I rewrote the numbers by hand. I broke each file into elements. At the same time, I was looking for who this forward metrics was connected to. There was nothing in the registers, but one of the invoice codes matched the format used in our previous project, Nexus Logistics. I remembered who led that case, the vice president, Mr. Travis Gray. He was dry, with a rare smile and dead eyes. He was never into the details, but he always signed off on the final. Oh my God, I whispered. If this really adds up, this isn't just financial manipulation. It's an elaborate system with controlled cogs. I wrote down another sentence. Gray, Nexus, FMG, one style, one logic, one shadow. And for the first time in all this time, I was really scared. Not for my job, but because I could be the next target. Because the shadow doesn't want to be seen. I called David at 8 in the morning. It was a risk, but also the last chance. We hadn't spoken in years, only seeing each other in the corridors when he was still working in the legal department. But he had once helped me out with a contract, and I remembered that he wasn't afraid to call a spade, even when it was uncomfortable. Hi, it's Gillian. I need to see you. It's urgent. He was silent for a couple of seconds. I'm not in the office right now. It's not for the office. It's something that could affect everything. We met at a coffee shop on Sterling Street. He came without a jacket, with dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept for several nights. "Talk quickly," he said, barely sitting down. "I'm not sure I want to hear it." I laid out the printed copies in front of him, the dummy company, the regular payments, the matches to the formats used in the old contracts. And Travis Gray, with his signatures on several documents, even though he had nothing to do with them formally. "I'm not a lawyer," I said, "but these things can't be called an administrative error. This is a crime." He ran his hand over his face. "What do you want? Do you want me to go to the board of directors? Or to the CEO herself? I want to know if someone is already covering it up." David smiled, but not happily. "Gillian, I've worked in this system for 12 years. I've seen it destroy people, not literally, but career-wise, reputationally. You become disloyal, uncooperative, emotional, and you are simply removed. But you were against it. Once, but not now, because I have learned to survive." I felt my chest tighten. "So you're not going to say anything?" He shrugged his shoulders. "I didn't start this, and I'm definitely not going to stop it. And if you tell me to be brave, just know that I've seen it end before, and I don't want to see it again." He stands up. "I'm sorry, Jill. I'm not your ally. I'm just being careful." And he walked out. I was alone. And for the first time, without illusions. In the afternoon, I decided to return to the office. Unofficially. We still had the old entrance from the side elevation. The pass was still working. They probably hadn't removed it yet. I put on a raincoat and a hood. It was trite, but I didn't want to be recognized. The archives department was empty. There had never been any people there, just scanners, cabinets, system units, and, most importantly, an old computer that was not connected to the general network. It was the computer that used to store backups. If anything was saved, it was here. I turned on the screen and started searching. A file called budget_draft_final.docs, dated 4 years ago. The author is T. Gray. The comments are in preview mode. Some of them are deleted, but there are still shadows of edits. I opened the Versions tab, and I saw a different name, not Gray. Comments, made at the request of HL, Legal Department. I froze. HL, Helena Lombard, head of the Legal Department. The cold made me shiver. Oh my God! The conspiracy was not just above. It was everywhere. In finance, legal, contracts. It was the system. And if I really want to expose it, I have to act differently. The plan to go to the management is dead. There is only one way left. Make copies. Take the information outside the company, and find someone who can make it public, without my name, without my participation, because the next step may not be a conversation, but isolation and slow disappearance from all systems. I waited for the clock to strike 7. Everything that could be public was over. My own night shift was beginning. Uninvited, unauthorized, dangerous. I put on a dark coat to blend into the shadows, and for the first time in years, I took a pocket flashlight with me. Not because the office is dark, but because I no longer believed that light was my ally. I parked on the street, not in the parking lot, right under the camera, on purpose. If I don't come out of here, someone has to see when I came in, and with whom. "Good evening," I mumbled to the guard. He just nodded, keeping his eyes on the soccer match. Someone was celebrating a goal on the screen, and I was walking by with a flash drive in my pocket and my heart rate at 100. The corridors were quiet, too quiet. There was no one. Only the faint smell of coffee, old, sour, like the memories of previous meetings. I knew where to go. The shared finance folder, 2023_funds_Q4. And there, in the memo tab, I found them. PDF documents signed HL, Helena Lombard. For the first time, not just an assumption. Real initials, real numbers, a real trail. There was another curiosity in the tables. The line consulting fees that had no trace in the official reports. I highlighted them. The same 3 companies that Lisa mentioned. I took screenshots. I saved them to a flash drive. I sent them to my old email under the guise of a pie recipe. The subject line, "Do not touch the homemade." My fingers trembled as I opened the draft of the letter I had started writing a week ago, to the Internal Control Department. Back then, I didn't dare to press send, and now I added just one sentence. "I have saved everything, and I will not be silent." And closed it again, without sending it. What if I was already being followed? At that very moment, a letter arrived. It was empty, no subject, no signature, just one sentence. "Don't play with fire, Gillian." I suddenly felt cold, as if someone had opened a window in my chest. I sat there in silence, and I listened. The silence was too dense, as if someone was breathing next to me. I opened a new folder. I named it simply, "Copies for Myself." I moved everything there, even photos from the notebook I used to keep at meetings. I wrote down names, dates, signatures. I was about to leave when the printer on my desk suddenly came to life. I didn't touch it. No presses, no requests. And suddenly, one sheet, a single page. On it was a phrase in courier font, unformatted, "Stop before it's too late." My breath caught in my throat. I took the paper. I couldn't look away. My whole body throbbed. They already know. They are close. And all I have is a few megabytes on a flash drive, a couple of letters, and something they didn't take into account. I won't break. On Saturday morning, I didn't wake up. I just stopped lying there with my eyes closed. That sheet of paper was playing in my head. Stop before it's too late. The room was as quiet as a laboratory before an explosion, and for the first time, I was really scared. Not panic, not hysteria, but that animal reaction when you realize that you have already been noticed, not just suspected. They are already monitoring you. You are in the field of view. And your next move may be the last one you make without the help of a lawyer. I checked the flash drive. The data was still there. But when I inserted it into my laptop, a strange freeze appeared. Somehow the computer was thinking for too long. I ripped out the media, uploaded all the documents to the cloud, which I hadn't accessed for a long time. The account was under a different name. My old student name. The same day I bought a new phone, without registering, and a laptop, the simplest one, with basic Linux. I knew it was too much. But after a nighttime letter and an unauthorized printer, overkill became my new level of security. In the evening, I decided to contact a person who specializes in digital traces. His name is Alan, and we had crossed paths at internal trainings. I wrote as if I were interested in an audit for an external company. He agreed to a meeting, but immediately asked me a question. "Why don't you write from your major?" "This is not the right time, Alan." "Then let's not use names." We met at a coffee shop in the industrial zone. He came with a yellow backpack and a thermos. After the first sentence, I realized that he was still the same paranoid guy I remembered. "Your Wi-Fi at home is infected. Your email is being read in real time. And most likely, your work account is being recreated on a test server." So, my every move is being watched? Not every move, but enough to understand what you're looking for, and when you're close. I took a sip of my coffee, which was already cold. "How do you know who it is?" Alan shook his head. "They use a proxy, but..." He tapped a few keys. I found a name in the test server logs. The last person to access a folder called Q4_funds_confidential. David_systems_admin. I almost dropped my cup. "Are you sure?" 100%. The account was created in February, and it has access that is not granted without the direct approval of the head of security. That's very high. I didn't answer it. David, my ex, my trusted ally. The one who said he didn't want to get involved in other people's intrigues. And now he's not just meddling, he seems to be swimming around like a shark. I returned home and for the first time opened a new file called Inner Circle. There were 3 names there, Helena Lombard, Elias Chang, and now David Mercer. These are not just individual cogs. It's a mechanism. And me? I am no longer a part of their machine. I am the one who put the wrench between the cogs. On Sunday morning, I sat down with coffee and a folder on which I had written with a marker, acceleration, not plan, not draft. It was acceleration. Because that's exactly how I felt, like an engine warming up before starting. I opened the map drawn on the sheet of paper. In the center was the company logo. Around it were 3 names: Helena, Elias, David. The lines between them are dotted, like trajectories that have yet to be confirmed. But it was already clear. They were not acting alone. It was a coordinated mechanism. I remembered one name that hadn't evoked emotion in me for a long time: Greystone Audit Group. They were the ones the company invited for neutral internal audits. But a year ago, they started working for the external market. They were the ones who could do what I could not: an official digital audit of system security. I sent them a short letter, as if from a small private project, and described the situation. We suspect interference with the document management infrastructure. Requests are not reflected in reports. Network behavior is strange. She left a contact number, not her own, but the same new number. She signed up as an R&D coordinator, a fictitious but believable role. 2 hours later, a man named Morris called me back. He spoke clearly, without sentiment. "Do you have any technical logs or observations? I have a list of login sessions that are not on schedule and emails that I didn't send. We will accept a preliminary request, but if it's really a corporate structure, we have to report it." I paused. "I understand. So please keep the client anonymous until we confirm the source." Morris agreed. And 3 hours later, I received the first report. They recorded abnormal behavior of nodes in Azure storage that redirected some requests to a mirror server in Dallas. And most importantly, this server was registered to a domain with the code of a subsidiary of the Ellis & Westcraft Holding Company. And who was in charge of R&D relations with Westcraft in Ukraine? Helena Lombard. I printed out the sheet and held it in my hands for a long time. For the first time, I had proof. Not an assumption, not a suspicion, but dry, technical, verified proof of the involvement of an external partner. I went to the old container in the park, the same one where I used to work on my first patent. It was quiet there. The signal was only partially picked up, and for the first time, I felt my heart beating not out of fear, but out of tension mixed with excitement. I sent the report to Alan. In 10 minutes, I received a reply. "You are on the right track, but from now on, be very careful. They already know you're close." In the afternoon, I returned home, and I noticed a detail that broke my plan to ignore everything. There was a black envelope under my front door. No signature, no markings, only one phrase inside: "You've made your move, now it's ours." I didn't open the envelope left under the door right away. First, I scanned it, then the photos, then the gloves. Only then did I take out the sheet. It was printed, standard font, and no logo. But the content was more than eloquent. "We have enough information to put an end to this. Be careful where you send copies." They thought I was playing the same game, that it was blackmail, that I was trading evidence. But they didn't understand the main thing. I don't want to negotiate. I want everyone to see. I had a plan. And I had a channel. One of the journalists I had once worked with as a technical expert for background commentary now worked for an independent investigative media outlet. I knew I could trust him, because he had once refused to smooth out a story and lost his contract with the corporate press because of it. I sent an email with the archive attached, not from my personal account, of course, a new mail server, an encrypted VPN tunnel, a temporary address, and a short accompanying text. Traces of external interference in the system of a large company, including logs, data routes, and internal messages. Source confirmed. Access for 72 hours. 6 hours later, there was silence. 8 hours later, a short email. "We are checking. If everything is confirmed, this is not just a scandal. This is a case for the prosecutor's office." In the meantime, I received another unexpected piece of news. This time from April, a former colleague who left a year ago, allegedly, of her own free will. "I saw what was leaked online. I don't know how you did it, but thank you. I was forced to keep silent then. Now I'm not. If you need testimonies or archives, I'm ready." I burst into tears, not out of weakness, but out of relief, because now I was not alone. I answered, "I need only one document, a memo from your last week, the one that confirms the transfer of access to the hub. Without it, they will say it was a glitch." She sent it in an hour, Signature, date. The manager's response. We are transferring access to the server according to the new internal filtering policy. Signature, Helena. In the evening, I received a new message, not by email, but on Twitter. Data leak from internal systems? No comment yet, but we're keeping an eye on it. Before, such a message would have scared me. Now it meant only one thing. It had become a reality. And in another half hour, the first article. The title, Parallel Servers. How a tech company could secretly duplicate client data for an external partner. The names were blacked out, but with details that only I could know. And one more fact. A source familiar with the situation believes that there was a signal inside the structure that was feeding data selectively. Suspicion falls on the R&D department. I closed the laptop. I took a breath. And at that very moment, the phone rang. The number was unknown. I answered it. Mrs. Gillian? Yes. I'm calling from Caradine Technologies' internal audit. We'd like to discuss your cybersecurity concerns. I smiled. You're a little late, but I'm free tomorrow. Shall we meet? Will you have a representative? Yes, and he'll be with the press. The building I entered that morning was already familiar, but everything seemed different. Under my feet was the carpet that I had once chosen myself when we launched R&D. Now it seemed alien. So did the people in the corridors who suddenly began to greet me. At the reception, they silently handed me a badge. Gillian Cole, independent expert. It was ironic. All my life I have been a shadow, and now I am an independent. You are expected, the administrator said. In room 4A. I was in no hurry. I knew that I was now at my best. David, Helena, two of the company's lawyers, the CTO and the new CEO, whom I had never met, were already in the room. He was studying me like an object. But before he could even say, "Thank you for coming," I put the flash drive on the table. This is the archive of transactions, messages, and logs that you tried to destroy. We have no reason to believe in the authenticity of... Helena began. They've already been published, I interrupted. It's just an official copy. And secondly, the servers in the Western Branch are no longer active. I shut them down at 7 o'clock this morning. Someone in the room sighed. Someone froze. David blushed. What is the purpose of this demonstration? The CEO finally asked. Not a demonstration. Dismantling. Your trust, your control, and your monopoly on data. You have no right to do that. I had an agreement, in 2016, and it is still valid. Until you sign a termination certificate, the system belongs to me. You just didn't check the fine print. There was silence. The lawyers started looking at something, and I calmly pulled out a new business card from my bag. Aurelia Analytics, transparency, outside the system. And one more thing. You may have heard that I am planning a launch, so it has already happened. A new client is one of the largest logistics companies. We're going to sue, David said. Of course you will, but now the trial is not about who was right in the office. It's about who acted honestly when everyone was silent. I stood up, not because I had to go somewhere, but because the place of the conversation had changed. From now on, it is no longer taking place at a round table. It is now in public. One last thing. My speech at the Future Data Ethics Forum has already been approved. The topic is how we lost trust and what we can do next. Someone tried to say something, but I was already leaving. Slowly. Not because of hesitation, but because of pleasure. Because there is a rare moment when you are not just heard, and it is impossible not to listen.